welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name is Simon.
And I'm McKelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 34 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. Today, we're discussing chapter 33 of A Game of Thrones. That's Eddard 8.
As always, we'll chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully, we'll provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what's happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the TV show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out the show notes. They provide some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter. How you doing?
I'm all right. I'm just wondering how many people now notice that we indulge in a little pedantry.
Well, regular listeners will smile every time.
That's right. From now until eternity. Or until we get too old to do this anymore. Which is
about the same time, I think.
Yes, that's right. So Stacey and I have been watching that Tiger. Is it like Tiger King or Tiger Boss?
Are you the only person in America who's been watching that?
Yeah, it is something. Have you watched it at all?
I'm part of the way through.
All right. Yeah,
it's amazing. It's an absolutely amazing thing.
It is.
Carson and I were discussing that it has everything in it, and then I said, and not only that, but it has things that I didn't know belonged to everything in it. You know, it's redefined what I meant by everything. You know? It had everything, and then it had things that didn't even belong in everything.
Had everything and then some. So I didn't know this, but Stacey said she already knew the story because it was originally, before it was a Netflix series, was done as a podcast. I don't know if it was by the same people or not, but it was a podcast. I think she said it was called Joe Exotic or something like that. So,
right. I'd seen him before because I saw the episode of John Oliver that he was mentioned.
Okay.
I saw that episode. So as soon as I saw it, I was like, I know that guy. He stood for president.
He did? I haven't gotten to that part yet.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I was spoiling it.
We only watched 2 episodes so far.
Well, you've got a lot to look forward to.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. That must seem strange to you now.
Oh, well. To any listeners who have not watched it yet, it's worth it. It is definitely worth it.
The thing is, what gets lost is the thing is, he portrays his nemesis in that show as such an awful person that you actually lose track of the fact that her message is kind of right. You know, they shouldn't be doing what they're doing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Really, absolutely.
I mean, but he manages to portray her into such a monster that you kind of don't believe her either.
Yeah, so, I feel in that way. I mean, we've only watched 2 episodes, but the fact that she has like entire army of volunteers that do all the work for no pay, and the one lady said she works 5 days a week, 6 hours a day for no pay, and I was like, my goodness,
and including Christmas.
Yes. Anyway, but were you supposed to talk about something else today? I feel like there was some book we've been reading or something.
Oh, you mean Game of Thrones?
I do.
I was like, God, I don't remember it. I don't remember what you're talking about here. Yes. Let's get down to business. A quick recap of what Eddard was up to last time we saw him.
Let's do that.
So, Ned had spent a nice day with Robert at the tournament before Ned heard from Varys that Queen Cersei had planned to get Robert killed in the melee. Also, that Jon Arryn was killed for asking questions.
Air quotes.
Since then, he's heard a story from Arya about a plot to kill him, which he seemed to discount, and was preparing to talk to Yoren of the Night's Watch, which we presume was about his wife Cat taking Tyrion Lannister hostage at the inn at the crossroads, because that's the one thing that Yoren knew that he would come to tell Ned about.
Yes,
you'd think.
Since Arya straight up asked him if it was about Benjen, and he said no, there's not a lot of other talking points the two of them have.
Right. Do you want more men for the Night's Watch? Well, yes, but it's a different thing. So, why don't we give them the summary?
Okay, so King Robert's graced the small council with his presence. You might think that Ned'd be pleased about that, but you'd be wrong. It seems that Lord Varys has given Robert the news that Daenerys Targaryen is pregnant, and Ned and Robert find themselves on opposite sides of the plan to have Daeny, her unborn child, and Viserys killed.
The debate gets very heated. Ned says that the plan to kill a 14-year-old girl is nothing better than murder. Robert does not care. He just wants it done. When the pair have exchanged angry words to the point Robert can take no more, he asks for the opinions from the rest of the council, who've been keeping quiet to this point. All of them, apart from Barristan and Selmy, stand with the king.
Ned says he will not put his seal to the order, and when Robert replies that he will, or he will find a new hand who will, Ned pulls off his Hand of the King clasp and lays it in front of Robert. And a furious Robert tells him to get out, and if he sees his face again, he'll have his head on a spike. Ned returns to the Tower of the Hand and starts the process of returning to Winterfell.
He's torn between looking forward to being back in Winterfell and disappointment and fear over leaving the job here undone, and with the realm so in debt. Petyr Littlefinger Baelish arrives and tells Ned that he's willing to take him to the brothel that he has to this point been looking for so ineffectually.
Yep.
That's all that happens. It's a short one.
It is. It's short but impactful. That's how I'd sum it up.
Yeah.
The way I think about it is it revolves basically around two conversations. One at the small council meeting and one between Eddard and Littlefinger in Ned's chambers.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, really, just to sort of summarise before we sort of look at things in detail, we knew this point was going to come between Ned and Robert. There just was no way this couldn't come.
Yep.
But that it's come so quickly and so over something that doesn't really matter. I mean, Ned's right. Murdering a 14-year-old girl is not great, but to give up over this one thing just seems, and in some respects, what again, jumping ahead to what we're going to talk about later, what Petyr Baelish says about there are more effectual ways to fight the king than just to say no to him.
Yep, I had the same thought.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get to the sort of play-by-play.
Let's walk through the small council meeting. Why don't we? So straight off the bat, Ned tells it starts by Ned saying that this isn't defending your crown; it's murder, and Robert says, I told you this was going to happen back in the Barrowlands. If you remember, I think that was Ned 2 when they were the very first chapter of them heading south from Winterfell. They were out riding, just the two of them, and it came up that Daeny was married, and Robert wanted her killed then, and Ned kind of talked him out of it. At that point, everyone was still being polite to one another, I guess. So that's what he was referring to.
Unusually, I do remember that. If you want to mark down the day.
And so that Ned says if he does do this, he will dishonor himself forever. And Robert, for one, really seems unconcerned about that. And although I agree with Ned that, yes, that is a very dishonorable thing to do, I'm not sure how many people will ever know that it's been done or even that Robert had anything to do with it, because it's right now they're about as far from the known world, opposite side of the known world as you can get from King's Landing in Westeros. So
yeah, and I think that's the thing. I mean, the dishonor only comes on Robert's own conscience.
Right.
It doesn't dishonor him in anybody else's eyes, well, apart from Ned's, I guess. You know, because they just nobody's going to know. I mean, it's going to be just sort of like, I mean, to the common folk, they're never going to find out. Yeah. And the nobles will be like, oh, well, yeah, she was a rival. I understand why you killed her, you know.
Yeah, if they ever even know.
They even hear it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not like there's a lot of news that goes back and forth from the far east side of Essos to Westeros. That would take ages to get there.
Yeah, Robert compares the news to a shadow of an axe over his neck, and Ned tells him there's no axe, there's just a shadow of 20 years removed. The shadow of a shadow 20 years removed. If it ever existed at all.
Yeah. That had me thinking, so Robert's hatred of the Targaryens has gone on for so long, and I get that. I guess I get that. It seems like he might maybe chill out a little bit, but you'd also think he'd be a little bit more secure in his grip on the Iron Throne. I mean, it's basically been a pretty peaceful realm for the past 15 years, minus the Greyjoy Rebellion and a few other skirmishes. So you would think that most of the houses might rally to him if it came to that kind of war that he's afraid of. There would be obviously the Conningtons and the Darys who we met not that long ago. There's a few who would certainly rally to the Targaryens, but I think most would just want to keep the peace.
But the problem is, and maybe this is what goes to it. Robert must realize in his sober moments what a failure he's been as a king, and why nobody would rally to his side purely off the fact that he's a good king. Yeah. They might rally to his side because he's the current king.
Right.
They might rally to his side because they still loathe and fear the Targaryens because of their recent rule. But no one's going to do it because they're going to say, "Oh, Robert's the best king we've ever had," and that's got to play on your conscience, I would think.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, but the other thing is, they do represent. Robert is right. They represent a genuine threat to his throne. They have a real claim to the throne, better than he does. Right. If you think of the throne as being a hereditary thing, it's a better claim than him. And so, if he can get rid of them, there's nobody left that has a better claim to him. Than him. So it's much harder for anybody else to rise up against him because nobody else can compare with their claim.
Yeah, that's very true. But Varys takes umbrage to Ned's term, if it exists at all.
My question there is Varys' motivation. So we distinctly heard him talking with Illyrio Mopatis in a plot to remove Robert from the throne and replace him with a Targaryen.
Right.
Now we hear him clearly saying to the small council that we should kill Daenerys. It's what needs to be done. And I mean, okay, if you're genuinely plotting against the Targaryens, if you're genuinely plotting for the Targaryens, why even bring this news?
Absolutely.
Why even bring this news? Keep this from them. Right. So he's playing both sides in some way here because he's absolutely doing what Robert would want him to do. Robert would want him to bring the news and then to agree with him that murder is the solution to the problem.
Yes, right. Maybe he's hedging his bets that Robert's going to end up failing in this attempt, and it would just make him look worse, and then give the Targaryens a boost in favor. Right,
yeah. So the fact that he would stoop so low is a boost to the Targaryens' fans, or perhaps even a catalyst to sort of like rise up against him.
Right.
This is the kind of thing that Aerys did, and we got rid of him.
So yeah, that makes sense.
But it's still, I don't know which side Varys is on. That's what's curious to me. Which side is Varys actually on? Where are his true motivations? Where are his true feelings? Because I was convinced when he talked to Mopatis that he wanted to bring down Robert. But this chapter, unless there's ways he could be playing the long game here, and maybe he hasn't chosen. I mean, I know that when I'm playing chess, I might have two possible strategies, and I haven't actually chosen between them. I'm playing them both and see which one looks like the better option.
That's right. Straddle that fence. The late Simon McGrother.
Yeah. So Ned ticks off a list of why this talk of fear and murder might be unnecessary. Varys could be wrong. Varys disagrees.
That's possible.
The child could be a girl. It's plenty of chance that the child would die in infancy or be miscarried. And the Viserys has already got a greater claim to the throne than this
He
child.
refers to Varys as an afterthought. Yes, I do get. But as far as claims to the throne go, Viserys still has the strongest claim of anyone to the throne. And if he decided to have a kid, that kid's claim would supersede Daeny's kid's claim.
The problem is that kid couldn't have another parent who was also a Dothraki overlord.
Yes, that is definitely a difference.
That's the key here. Yeah. Because they've gone from two orphan children living in a distant continent with no power or friends to potentially heading up an army that could win the war.
Yeah. Right.
And I think at some point in this chapter they describe Viserys as a fool.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. He says, I want the girl dead, the baby dead, and that fool Viserys too, like he's an afterthought. You might as well kill him while you're at it.
But again, the thing about that is Viserys has no way to marry into an army.
Yeah, I guess not. Robert, after Ned lists all these reasons why they shouldn't really need to worry just yet, Robert says, "And what if it's a boy? And what if he lives?" And Ned responds with, "He'll fear the Dothraki the day they teach their horses to run on water."
Yeah. He has a point for the short term, but the long term, Robert's right. A son born to Khal Drogo and Daenerys Targaryen is a dangerous threat.
It is.
The well-being of the throne. But not for 20 years, and Robert's drinking himself to death quicker.
That was exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. But yes, this baby will be a different animal than just a Dothraki or just some Daeny's baby. This is a hybrid of a horse warlord and a dragon or Targaryen.
Like a dragon centaur.
That's right.
So Robert accuses Robb of giving the advice that they should wait until the Dothraki land on the shores of Westeros before they do anything. But again, it doesn't seem like a terrible tactic,
Yeah.
I don't see how... Yeah. I mean, you could assassinate that child.
Right.
Later on, when that child's 15, go and assassinate it.
I was wondering if maybe they're looking at this as, let's just end the Targaryen line right now before it expands. She could have 6 kids.
Certainly what Robert wants, yeah.
Yeah, she could have 6 kids, and each of them could have 6 kids, and then you've got an enormous Targaryen line built. And, this is what Robert has wanted for a long time. And this seems like maybe just the push that he needs to get it done at this particular moment. But like you said, it's likely going to end up being Joffrey's problem to figure out anyway, the way that Robert's lifestyle's going.
We buy life insurance. We care about our progeny,
Yeah, although just last Ned chapter, he was saying what a terrible king Joffrey would make with Cersei in his ear. And that's the thing. He doesn't want to be on the throne anyway. He straight up said that. I guess it's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to actually give up the throne.
Yeah. I mean, one idea there is Renly's idea of like supplanting Cersei with a queen who Robert loves more.
Right.
Have children there, disenfranchise the 3 older children, and maybe a better, a Baratheon Tyrellian might be a slightly better kid.
Yeah. Good point. And they could come up with a reason for Joffrey to need to be sent to the wall. As you imagine.
Right. Oh, that's a nice dream.
Joffrey at the wall.
So on the subject of Renly, he chimes in that the matter's simple. We should have killed them ages ago, but Robert made the mistake of listening to Jon Arryn.
Yeah.
So Renly, he is a constantly evolving and interesting character.
He's quite
he seems to be
enigma.
smiley and jokey. Yeah. But he can be ruthless and cold at times, and he is plotting in some way. Well, the only actual evidence we have for his plot was him showing the picture of Marjorie Tyrell to Ned. But Varys' explanation of that made a lot of sense,
Yeah, of course, a lot that Varys said that end of that chapter made a lot of sense. And now, looking back at it, it looks like he might have just been telling Ned stuff that he wanted to hear. Because he's contradicted himself multiple times. He's contradicted himself and then gone back and uncontradicted himself with the whole getting Robert killed thing.
Yeah, I wonder if his philosophy is to just always be agreeable to the people he's talking to.
Sure.
So maybe he's not directly plotting, just a yes man. In terms of, because I think he sees himself as a facilitator, not an instigator.
Right. Yeah.
And so he doesn't feel the need to take a side, simply to pass information, share information, and make some choices depending on where he thinks the wind is blowing. But
yeah, that makes sense. I could see that. So Ned's response to Renly, after Renly says that Robert made a mistake by listening to Jon Arryn and not having them killed ages ago, is that mercy is never a mistake. I guess I kind of want to debate whether that's true or not, because I have a question about whether that statement is true. But he follows that up by relaying a story of Barristan Selmy during the Battle of the Trident, where Barristan killed dozens of men while fighting against Ned and Robert, but was gravely wounded, and rather than have Selmy killed like certain people wanted, Robert instead said he won't kill a man for loyalty nor for fighting well, and had Robert's own maester tend to Selmy's wounds. So Ned's point was, you have been empathetic before and spared someone's life.
Yeah, but I think the difference here is the claim to the throne, you know?
Yes, but Selmy had no claim to the throne.
Exactly. If Selmy had been a 14-year-old girl injured in battle with no claim to the throne, he would have nursed her back to health. And if Daenerys was a 65-year-old man with a claim to the throne who happened to be pregnant, he would send assassins to kill him, you know? It's purely the situational. I think the difference between those two,
Yeah.
which if I were Robert, I would point to. I would say, look, I'm not a changed person. You know, if somebody fought against me nobly for a cause that was, and they were loyal to their ruler, I'd show them mercy today.
Yeah, Ned doesn't see it that way. That's for sure. But
Yeah.
I wonder about that mercy is never a mistake thing. I'm not sure that is a statement you can necessarily make. I can think of instances where you might show someone mercy and then they turn around and stab you in the back. So
Yeah. But I mean, you got to live with the consequence of not showing the mercy. You got to live with the
right.
The guilt of not showing that mercy, and that might be as bad as anything they can do to you.
That is true. So yeah, Robert gets he is a little bit affected by Ned's story about Barristan Selmy. He blushes a little bit, and like we were just saying, he says it's not the same. Selmy was a member of the King's Guard, therefore he has absolutely no claim to the throne. So, and then Ned retorts, whereas Daeny is a 14-year-old girl.
Yeah, and the argument being from Ned that they ended the Targaryen line to stop the murder of children.
Right.
But Robert says no, it's to put an end to Targaryens.
Yeah, that goes.
There are 2.5 left.
Right. We were just talking about that earlier, about whether maybe the part of the plot to get a Targaryen back on the throne is that, make Robert look like another mad king trying to kill children.
Yeah.
And that might work in the Targaryens' favor in the long run.
Yeah. Definitely an interesting idea. Then Ned really doubles down on things here. He says, he talks about the change in Robert. Robert never feared Rhaegar Targaryen, who was fearsome. And the years have so unmanned him that he trembles at the shadow of an unborn child.
Yeah, he's starting to step on some thin ice now.
Oh, yeah, I'd say so.
There's
Robert says, not another word. Have you forgotten who's king? And Ned, unable to listen to the first part of that, says, no, have you?
Oh, man. There's one person in the whole realm who could keep his head on his shoulders after making a comment like that. Yeah. And
so Renly says she's got to be killed. So they turn to the rest of the small council at this point. Varys says we have no choice, sadly.
Yeah, Varys once again tries to play both sides. He's on Robert's side. Sadly we have to do this, but he also is trying to be on Ned's side. He says, we didn't mention this, but beforehand, he goes on this a bit of a long monologue saying about how terrible and vile it is, but those of us who are charged with ruling the realm sometimes have to do terrible, vile things. And so he's kind of trying to do the Walder Frey thing and beyond.
But it's interesting though, because if he is treasonous, if he is working against Robert, the phrase "we must do vile things for the good of the realm" might be a sort of covering his own sins to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Next up is Barristan Selmy, who says there's honour in facing an enemy on the battlefield and none killing him in the mother's womb. So
yeah, no surprise that he has Ned's back. They're basically like two peas in a pod, those two.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And this is the guy. Selmy is the guy who was saved previously by Robert's moral code. So worked for him once before.
Didn't have a claim to the throne.
Right.
So Grandmaster Pycelle, in many respects, could be the deal breaker here. Because if he were to side, and he makes the point that he doesn't serve the king, he serves the realm. That's his job. So he doesn't have a dog in the fight between the Targaryens and the Baratheons. But if the boy does become a man and he does bring the Dothraki to Westeros, then thousands will die.
Yeah.
So
it makes that's a solid point. It really is.
It is.
But they're all taking it for granted that this kid has this ambition. He can't guarantee that that's the way this will go. Now, she could have 6 more kids, and one of them might have such an ambition. But he's right. If this kid grows up and puts together an army and comes to Westeros and tries to take his throne back, yes, he's right. Thousands will die because they let this kid live.
I read an interesting book once by Stephen Fry, English wit and actor, called Making History, in which a time machine allows someone to go back and kill Hitler before the Second World War.
Yeah.
And they do it, and when they do it, they wake up the next morning, and the world is much worse.
Oh, interesting.
The world of the late 20th century is much worse than it was in our reality.
Huh.
And so they actually spend the rest of the book trying to go back and undo their good deed.
Oh, wow.
They try to reinvent the time machine to stop themselves from killing Hitler, kind of thing.
Yeah, interesting.
And so, yeah, it's hard to know what Pycelle is saying makes sense, but it's very difficult to know that that's true.
Right.
It might have the opposite effect. Let's say you kill Daenerys and the unborn baby. This might make the Dothraki so furious that they all band together, they all come, and they all show no mercy to anyone in Westeros. It could lead to 100 times as many deaths, for all you know.
That's a good point. I like that.
Highly recommended that book as well.
What'd you say it was called?
He's a great Making History by Stephen Fry.
All right. When we finish all these episodes, then I'll start that book in about 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and Pycelle echoes what Varys said. Varys said, if gods grant Daenerys a son, the realm will bleed.
Yeah, I think that was Varys seconding. That's what Varys said in response to Pycelle. Yeah.
Oh, he said it in response, sorry.
Yeah, so. He was kind of like seconding. He really liked his statement. He was seconding it. And then Littlefinger, of course, Littlefinger has to be too cool for everything. He stifles a yawn and makes a crass comparison about if you're in bed with an ugly woman, it's best to close your eyes and kiss her. Waiting won't make her prettier. And what he means is, this is a messy deed. Just do it.
Get it done.
Yeah. So
Robert thinks it's over. The small council has voted.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he knew that he was going to get the support he needed from his flatterers and fools, as he once referred to them as. So,
but I don't know actually. I mean, honestly, I think Pycelle is a rogue who's got different motivations than just loyalty to Robert. Varys, clearly, he is difficult to read. Littlefinger, you never know which way he's going to fall.
Yeah, but I think
when
they see how badly and passionately the king wants something and feels about that,
they're cowed by him. They go with him. Only Ned has the backbone to stand up against him.
And Selmy, because Selmy's got nothing. He's nothing if not honorable. So
yeah.
But I feel like the rest were going to, even if whether they disagreed with him or not, were going to side with the king. And we find out later, like Littlefinger said, there might have been better ways to go about getting what you wanted than the way.
So they move to how they're going to carry out the plan. Renly proposes giving Mormont a pardon in exchange for doing it, but Varys says they can't do that in Vaes Dothrak. In Vaes Dothrak, if someone pulls a blade on her, they won't survive the assassination attempt, successful or not.
Yeah. I think what he says is, if I told you what they do to him, none of you would sleep tonight. So that doesn't sound very good.
Varys proposes the Tears of Lys, the poison that he just told Ned that Jon Arryn was poisoned with this. So...
when I read that, I was like, why would you bring that up right now?
Well, I mean, it works.
Yes. Maybe he's like, hey, we got a really good idea from that whoever it was that murdered Jon Arryn. Let's try that.
Yeah. And it interesting that it got Pycelle's attention.
It did, yeah. His eyes flicked over.
Because we were always interested by Pycelle's reaction when Ned said, "Was he poisoned?"
Yes, right.
Because he said, not a poison I've ever seen, but clearly he's heard of the Tears of Bliss. So.
I had that same thought. Maybe when Varys said that, Pycelle went, "Oh, I had never thought of that."
Hey, you remember that question you asked me a couple of weeks ago? I got a thought. But Robert vetoes that because it's a coward's weapon.
Yeah,
and Ned is...
That really sends Ned over the edge. He's had enough about this. He says, "You send hired knives to kill a 14-year-old and you quibble about honor?"
Yeah.
And that's when Ned pleads to Robert to do it himself. And he uses the phrase from chapter 1 that what he told Bran, the man who passes a sentence should swing the sword. And obviously we all knew that wasn't going to be what was going to go down. But he wants him to, as he puts it, look in her eyes before he kills her, see her tears, and hear her last words. And I think if Robert did have to do that, it would certainly cause him to hesitate. Whether he would go through with it or not, I'm not exactly sure, but it certainly is easier than giving the command to do it.
Yeah, but I'm actually thinking that he is so intense about this that he would successfully do it, to be honest. So that's enough for Robert. He wants Ned to carry out the order. Ned's not going to do it, refuses to fix his seal to the order. And he says, you're the king's hand. You do as I command, or I'll find a hand who will. And Ned says, I wish him every success, and removes the badge of honor, the hand.
Yeah, that's when everything goes downhill really fast. He says, thought you a better man than this, Robert. Thought we had made a nobler king. And that's when Robert completely loses it and tells him to get out and make sure he never sees his face again, or he'll have his head on a spike.
Yeah.
And you know, like I think you had mentioned at the beginning of this episode, this kind of blow up was coming.
Yeah. It
was inevitable. They're too different from one another for them not to come to a head like this at some point.
It's interesting that Jon Arryn lasted as long as he did without the same thing happening to him.
You know, that's a good point.
Maybe because Robert saw him as a father figure, he was more beholden to him.
Yeah.
Whereas he sees Ned as a brother, and now he's the king. His brother should do what he says.
Yeah, I think that very well might be the answer. So Ned doesn't storm out. I think at this point he's more just sad and disappointed than angry anymore. He just turns on his heels and walks out and heads back to the Tower of the Hand. And
the conversation he overhears as he leaves is they're discussing how to go about it. Pycelle suggests one of the faceless men of Bravos, who are a guild of assassins.
Yeah, Littlefinger says it's too expensive. You could hire an army of sellswords for the price of killing a merchant, let alone killing a Khaleesi. So
Ned goes back to the Tower of the Hand, and he gets Veon Poole to start packing things up. He is going to get out of King's Landing quickly with the girls, and the entourage can follow behind him.
Yeah, he says to Veon Poole, Veon Poole says, refers to him as Lord Hand, and he says, "Hand no longer, the king and I have quarreled," which is a bit of an understatement.
Yeah. And
then he starts thinking about it, and he's like, yeah, it's probably best that I get out of here as soon as possible.
Yeah, but actually, I think he's not in danger from Robert, because Robert will cool off. But I think he might be in danger from the people who were afraid of him when he was Hand of the King.
Although he says this, he thinks that Robert wouldn't actually hurt him, and he says that he says he'll cool off like he always does, and then he fixates on the word always for a second, and then he thinks Robert still has pure hatred for Rhaegar Targaryen, who's been dead for 15 years, and he doesn't say it, but you could feel that he's thinking, could Robert learn to hate me that much?
Yeah. And also, the news of Cat and Tyrion hasn't broken in King's Landing yet, but it's going to. Yoren arrived with the news. Others will be arriving with the news.
Yep.
It's going to get out, and now he's not the Hand of the King anymore.
Yes.
All the more reason to be on the road as quick as you can.
Yeah. And, he mentions this too, that, Robert couldn't care less about Tyrion, but he's angry at Ned. This is Ned's wife doing this. It's his wife's brother, who Cersei also doesn't really care for Tyrion, but it all comes back to pride. This is going to...
You could well imagine them taking Ned prisoner as a bargaining or a trade-off chip against Tyrion. You give Tyrion back, we'll give Ned back, you know.
Right. Which you could never imagine before this fight broke out. I mean...
Right, exactly. Not while he's Hand of the King, yeah.
Yeah.
So he thinks about going by boat because that'll get him out of there quicker, and he can also stop off at Dragonstone and talk to Stannis on the way. Seems like we've already said that's the quicker way to go.
Right. It seems like when they go by boat, they have a lot less problems than when they take the King's Road.
The biggest problem is seasickness and vomit in the beer.
That's right. And Ned, I believe Ned's clean shaven, so it shouldn't be an issue. But Ned's got some mixed feelings about leaving King's Landing. He's, on one hand, he's very happy with the prospect of getting back to Winterfell. In fact, he's so happy he considers that he and Kat could possibly have another baby when he gets back there. So
very happy.
But he also has the fear, and as he puts it, that Robert and his council of cravens and flatterers will beggar the realm or sell it off to the Lannisters in payment of debts if they're not kept in check. And that's certainly a concern.
Yeah, but then if he goes to Dragonstone, he might get closer to the truth of Jon Arryn's death. Yeah. But then he's also worried about finding out this truth. It feels like the Ned Stark we know would want to get to the truth no matter the consequences. But the Ned Stark we know is also a real guy, and he recognizes that this might be such a dangerous truth he's stumbling close to that it might be better to not know.
Yep. So while he's doing all this ruminating, Littlefinger pays him a visit. He's on his way to have dinner with Tanda Stokeworth, and Ned is not in the mood. He says to Littlefinger, "I can't think of anyone whose company I desire less than yours," so he lets him know he's not in the mood. But Littlefinger lets him in on the details, fills him in on the details of the meeting after he left, and he tells him that Littlefinger talked him out of hiring the faceless men, and instead Varys will let it know that a lordship waits anyone who does the deed, meaning who does kill Daeny and her family, which disgusts Ned. Littlefinger says, "Titles are cheap, faceless men are expensive."
Yeah, so Littlefinger saved a bunch of money there, but he's also pointing out that likelihood is that this will fail, and that once one attack on her fails, the Dothraki will be more careful and she'll be invulnerable.
Solid point. Forward.
So he's probably done more to protect her by arguing for this cockamamie plan than Ned did by saying let's not do it.
Yep, and he's that's a very solid point. Yeah, there's more than one way to address the problem, and
which is why I would say that Ned is wrong to dismiss the small council as flatterers and fools. They are all smart people on that council, with the possible exception of Renly.
No,
I'm just not sure about Renly.
Yeah.
It's too hard to know.
Yeah,
I like him, but I'm just not sure.
Right.
And they're all thinking things through more carefully than Ned does. Ned just sees the honourable path and just takes that. But I will say, this maybe belongs in pedantry, but I will say there is a significant problem with Littlefinger's plan.
Do tell.
If you do send an assassin to try and kill Daenerys with the intent of that assassin failing, there's no more surefire way to have the Dothraki gird their loins and gather their sea legs than an attack on their Khaleesi.
Yeah.
Now they're like, okay, you know what? We were just going to play these Targaryens along for a little while because it was kind of fun, you know. But now we're going to come and invade Westeros and teach you a lesson, you know.
Yeah, I can see that. If they know who it was that tried to kill her.
Well, I think even Mormont, who is a spy for Westeros, would tell them that was a Westeros attack on you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What else would it be, really? So, before Ned leaves, Littlefinger offers to take him to the brothel he's been searching for.
Yeah. That had me wondering, did he know ahead of time, or did he figure it out faster than Jory? I mean, he is the brothel expert of King's Landing. It's
curious, yeah. It's curious. It's curious how all of these smart guys know what they know. And some of it we just have left to speculate about.
So, anything else about the chapter?
No, that's enough, I think.
Okay.
Background, Faceless Men. So the Faceless Men are a religious society of assassins who worship the many-faced god, who is a god of death. They're based in the House of Black and White in the free city of Braavos, though they claim to have originated in a Valyrian freehold. The phrase associated with this cult is Valar Morghulis, the High Valyrian for all men must die, Valar Morghulis. The traditional response to this is Valar Dohaeris, or all men must serve. So when someone says Vala Morgulis to you, say Vala Dohaeris back to them.
Right. It's just polite.
Yeah. Followers of him of many faces consider death to be part of the natural order of things and a merciful end to suffering. According to the Guild, the god is present in many religions under different names, such as the Black Goat in Qohor, the Lion of Night in Yi-Ti, and the Stranger in the Faith of the Seven.
Yeah, cool stuff. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about some background between Barristan and Robert, Sir Barristan Selmy, that is, and King Robert. And as we know, it was mentioned in this chapter, and we've mentioned it several times before, that Barristan fought in the Battle of the Trident on the Targaryen side. And as we were told in this chapter, he was seriously wounded in that battle. He was specifically wounded by arrow, spear, and sword, while in the process killing dozens of Ned and Robert's friends, as Ned mentioned. But when he was healed up, Barristan considered seeking out Prince Viserys in exile, but Viserys was too young to rule on his own and had already begun to show signs of Targaryen madness, which, let's face it, things had not improved for that since then. So because his life and the life of so many others had been so chivalrously spared during the war by the new King Robert, Barristan instead took Robert's pardon and was named Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. But it's not all love and roses between Robert and Barristan. Since he was so badly wounded, Barristan was not present in King's Landing when the bodies of Prince Rhaegar Targaryen's children, Princess Rhaenys and Prince Aegon, who were killed during the sack of King's Landing, when they were presented to Robert by Tywin Lannister. So Barristan later felt that if he had been present and Robert had smiled at the bodies, nothing would have stopped him from killing the man. So he and Ned clearly share the same thoughts on child murder.
Yeah, and of course, it's interesting that because of course he knew those two children, because he was a Kingsguard to them too, right?
Right. Yeah.
They were the grandchildren of the king, so he probably knew them a little bit. So there was a personal aspect to that too. I guess he also knew Viserys a little bit as a very young child as well.
Right.
But not Daenerys, because she was born on Dragonstone.
Yeah, right? Dragonstone, yeah. Although he, even, what was he, like 7 or 8 when the sack of King's Landing happened, and already Barristan got the idea that Viserys was a little cray-cray. Going a little cray-cray already.
When you said that, I thought you were talking about those were rumours that were coming back to them. I didn't realise that was before he left King's Landing. He was already beginning to look like a monster.
That's a good question. I mean, he took the pardon right at the end of the war, so Varys couldn't have been more than...
Viserys.
Yeah, Viserys. That was right at the end of the war that they fled, toward the end of it. It had to have been... He had to have been pretty young, no more than 10 at the most, you would think.
Yeah. So, to comparison with the TV show, this is all largely intact, but there's a connecting scene between the scene where Yoren talks to Ned and the small council meeting, which is Ned is rushing to see the king with the news that he's learned from Yoren about Tyrion. A functionary meets him and says, "Oh, you're wanted at the small council." He's like, "No, I've got to go and see the king." And the functionary says, "The king is at the small council meeting." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And then Ned says, "Is this about my wife?" Quite the poker player, that Ned. The functionary's like, "No, I think it's about Daenerys Targaryen." He's like, "Oh, yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant."
4 aces? Is that a good hand?
And then the other sort of marginal difference is that Selmy is not part of the small council in the show.
Oh,
it's the rest of them.
So
he's
Ned
just
is
dropped from that.
Ned is really on his own then.
Completely on his own, yeah.
Oh boy.
So pedantry, apart from the one I mentioned earlier, there's not an awful lot. But what is Varys up to? I mean, I just can't quite tell. It just feels like the last two things we've seen him doing are completely at 180 degrees from one another. Unless, like Littlefinger, he thinks that a stupid, botched attempt on the child's life... Well, actually, yeah, what I just said about Littlefinger's plan is actually might precipitate the Targaryens getting back, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So maybe that is it. Maybe that's what he's doing. All right, news and notes. I think we had some positive feedback on the indulging story.
Oh, the indulging story. Yes, we did. Yes.
I'm glad it was well received.
Oh man. Good stuff.
So if you didn't hear that, listen to the previous episode. No, the previous episode. When was it?
2 episodes.
Which episode was it?
It was Cat 6, I think.
Cat 6. I
believe it was Cat 6. And also in news and notes, this is sad news, but Odin, the dog that played Summer on the Game of Thrones TV show, died of mouth cancer.
Oh, that's sad.
It is.
I didn't know they were real animals. I just always assumed they were just CGI.
When they were younger, I believe. I think at some point they became CGI. I'm not positive on that, though.
Oh, that's good intel. Well done.
Well, about Odin is, yeah, but when they started and stopped becoming CGI, I could just be making that part up.
Well, farewell, Odin.
Yes.
To Valhalla's Hall. Because he's called Odin.
Right, I get it. All right, so in conclusion, like we've mentioned a couple times, we knew that this situation between Ned and Robert was coming at some point.
But yeah, the worrying thing is this is way too soon. We hope they would go at least a couple of years. And
yeah.
He's going to leave a power vacuum behind him, which the small council seems to just... What they don't have at heart is making Robert a good king.
Right.
That seems to be lacking.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure that they're all crooked. I'm not sure that they're all bad. I'm not sure that they're against Robert. But it doesn't feel like any of them are motivated to try and improve him as a king. And so probably the hole would be filled by a Lannister. And
yeah, absolutely. Seems like it. Who else? I mean, Cersei has him filling every single opening with Lannisters. So you certainly think she would put the pressure. I mean, quite honestly, I think it might be Jaime Lannister. That's who she wanted to fill the role in the first place. He didn't want it, but, she probably will put him up for the job anyway.
Or perhaps Tywin again.
Yeah, maybe, if he's interested.
Because he was hand to Aerys.
Yeah.
And might come back. Especially, I mean, gets him closer to his children and grandchildren, I guess,
You'd like to think that if they both took a night to sleep on it, tomorrow they might wake up and say, yeah, I'm sorry that went down the way that it did.
Well, certainly I can imagine Robert saying that, but I wonder if Ned is just like feeling the weight off his shoulders.
Maybe. It seems like it a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, just jump on that boat and get out of here.
Yeah.
Let him send a rave and say, I'm really sorry.
Right. Let it.
And I'll say, I'm just going to spend the winter up here.
Yeah.
I'll be back down next summer, The whole thing does seem a bit out of character for Robert, though. Obviously he does hate the Targaryens, but he is Robert Baratheon, first of his name,
Yeah.
And what he's been saying for the last couple of episodes is he would love the chance to be in the saddle again, fighting.
Right. Yeah. You'd
So
think he would be like, bring him on. Let's do this thing, not kill the unborn baby.
Exactly. 40,000 Dothraki, that's the kind of challenge he's going to be looking forward to.
Right, 40,000 Dothraki on one side, him and his Warhammer on the other side.
That's what he wants.
Once they find the breastplate expander to get it over his belly.
and if they can't get it over him, it's Joffrey's job. And
it is. Let's face it.
No one's going to miss him. All right, let's wrap up.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, so as always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at @ghostharrenhall. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and don't forget, you can listen to our episodes on YouTube as well.
And if you like what we're doing, leave us a review, and that will help us get the word out.
Certainly
You
would.
can always tweet us, Facebook about us. All right, thanks for everything.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.